Hello and welcome back to The Sweet Spot. This week's episode is around messaging and how that relates to your website and connecting with the people that land on your website. I think you'll really enjoy this episode. There's a lot of great takeaways, so let's get into it. Masha Coyne is a messaging strategist and website copywriter for interior designers. Her signature Reveal process, a data-driven framework centered around client interviews, gives her the intel she needs to write copy that magnetically, almost magically, attracts designers' dream clients. Driven by coffee and an obsessive love of research, Masha lives in Toronto with her husband, 3 kids, and antisocial cat, Bailey. I hope you enjoy the episode. Welcome to the Small Business Sweet Spot. I'm Barb Davids, and I'm here to help you get more website traffic and leads with simple, actionable SEO and content strategies. In each episode, I share tips and tactics and talk with other business owners who help us grow both in our business and in life. I'm so glad you're here. Let's go. Hello, Masha. Thanks for joining me today. How are you?
Good. How are you, Barb?
I am good. So I am excited to talk to you because we are going to talk about messaging and copy and how we can bring emotion or have some sort of connection with the people that we work with when they don't know us yet, like they're landing on our website or they see our socials or something, and how we can bring that connection more, especially with AI going on. There's a lot going around that, and it's pretty generalized. Sometimes people like it, some people don't. And you have a really great perspective on how to do that and how to bring connection with our audience. When we start thinking about how to do connection, maybe what's one of the things we need to keep in mind when we start going down this road?
Yeah. Well, first of all, why do we even need to do that? Because oftentimes when we land on people's websites, on service providers' website, what I see, and I do website audits, I do specifically website copy audits as part of my business. And what I often see is, here's a little bit about my story. Here's what I do. Here are the services that I offer. But there isn't something that your audience can relate to. There isn't something that helps you create that emotional connection. So I think it's so important to weave that connection building aspect of your copy into your copy on your website. And maybe where we start is, and that's the one thing that I always start with, is knowing your audience. I feel like every service provider, especially like you and myself and other marketing strategists, that's where we start. We send our clients a client questionnaire to better understand their business and to better understand their clients, because at the end of the day, we're trying to build a connection with the ideal clients. We don't want to attract just anyone. We want to attract very specific people. And where we want to start is understanding our audience inside out. So I write website copy as my signature service, and I do client interviews as part of that process. The reason why I do that is because I don't want to rely on what my clients tell me about their clients, because oftentimes I need to dig a little bit deeper. I need to understand, what are the pain points that the audience experiences? What are their desires? What are their motivators? What do they want more than anything? How do they make decisions? What drives them? All those things that you can only get through that conversation, and clients love talking about them. So I easily get that intel on them. And then I take that intel, those audience insights, and weave them into your website copy. So what happens as a result of this process? They land on your website and they feel understood. They feel like they get you, that you get them. They feel like, yes, it speaks to me. She gets my pain points. She gets my struggles. And that's why we absolutely need to start with knowing and understanding your audience inside out, and then leveraging that information in your marketing, in your messaging.
Okay. And I think maybe a couple of years ago or something, when people started talking, or it started becoming more apparent to connect emotionally, it was almost like an icky word for me, because I was like, emotions. Like, I don't want to even go there.
Yeah. Like how do you even do that? How do you
Yeah.
even do the emotion?
Right. But it's not like that, right? Because that's where you're just trying to relate to them, not necessarily
Exactly.
pour your heart out and give a sob story or some happy, joyous thing, right? Like,
No, absolutely not. We're just trying to get to that point where your audience gets you. And actually, one of the One of the other things that I recommend when you want to build an emotional connection in your marketing is to create an emotional brand story. So a relatable brand story, because what you're trying to give your audience is something they can relate to. And that does not mean that we're talking about your family and your kids and all the things, because interior designers that I work with, they often kind of keep it close to themselves. They are worried about going too personal, and you really do not have to. All you need to do is share a little bit of your why, a little bit about your brand, a little bit. So it's not like it's a list of, here's where I went to school, here are my accreditations, here's, I do awesome with attention to detail, all the things. That's what I usually see on about pages. And right now we're literally speaking about pages because that's where your brand story is told. But where we want to get to is share about what brought you here today. Give them something. Stories connect so much better than just simple facts. They're a lot more memorable. It's a much more effective way to stand out. And when you share your story and your whys, what you're getting at is that your audience, when they land on your website, they feel this, yes, she gets me. This is the person. I feel like I already know her. That's what we're trying to get to. So that people, your ideal clients, when they get on your website or they come across your marketing messaging, that they feel like they already know you. Because at the end of the day, it is a human to human connection. It's not like a service provider to customer. It's a human to human. And when you build that relatable brand story, it humanizes your brand.
Okay, that's good to know. Okay. And I like that because it seems kind of weird, or it seems weird to me to always be like listing attributes of ourselves. Like, so I
Yeah.
get that. That makes sense. Although I do have a sales page that does list attributes almost, but it's written in a way that is more storytelling versus just like literally bullet points. So
You're getting
that
to my third
works.
point, the
Oh,
storytelling. The storytelling is the way to go. Like you
there you go.
literally, taking the words out of my mouth, because
Well, let's go into
storytelling.
that.
Yeah,
Let's just go to that.
absolutely.
That's good.
Yeah. So storytelling works. And when it comes to storytelling, so how do we do storytelling? Because I feel like there's so much hype about storytelling lately.
Yeah.
Everybody's talking about, you got to use more storytelling in your marketing. Well, how do you
But
actually do that?
how? Yeah.
But how do you actually do that? So you want to share, first of all, we start with your brand story. So you're sharing your journey of what got you here today, because we're creating that emotional connection. But also, we can share anecdotes, we can share customer testimonials, we can share case studies. Because what storytelling does is that somebody told me the other day, it awakens one part of your brain when you use storytelling, and it makes you feel like you're experiencing that
Mm.
along the side of whoever is going through that story or has gone to that story in the past. And when you use storytelling, you make others feel like they're part of your story. You make others feel like they're right there with you, experiencing that story. So, for example, one very practical way to do that is to use case studies, or I would say like elaborate customer testimonials, where a customer is recalling how you helped them, what was happening along the way. So then the person who is reading that, they're like, oh, that I can relate. Like this seems like a similar situation that I'm going through. And
Mhm.
it's so helpful to know how this particular service provider has helped her or him. And, it helps us visualize that, okay, so I can kind of visualize what it would be like to work with them. So that's one way to use storytelling. Another way to use it is, those like Instagram or TikToks or Reels posts where it goes into, here's a day in the life of whoever.
Mhm.
That's a story. That's one way of telling stories. It's like, come with me on as we explore on a client site or whatever. If it's not an interior designer, if it's another service provider, come with me, join me on my day, and I'll show you what I do throughout the day. That's one way of telling a story. You are inviting somebody into your business, but not in a way where it's like, here's what I do and here's how I help. No, literally watch me as I go through this, as I hop on a call, or, I just hopped up from a call and this is what I learned and this was the situation. And it's just so interesting because you're inviting somebody into your world, into your business, but through storytelling.
Awesome. I like that. And
Yeah.
what are some other ways then that we can do that?
So another way to build an emotional connection is to use language that resonates with your ideal clients. So when you kind of look at your website messaging, you might be using some industry jargon because that's what you know. But what's more important is what your audience know, what your audience are familiar with. So one of the reasons why I do client interviews is not only to learn about their pain points and desires and motivators and all those things, but I'm also picking up on what kind of language are they using when they're talking about working with you as a service provider or going through projects or hiring or looking for one. And I'm paying attention to literally the words and phrases that they use, and I then take those words and phrases and use them in writing website copy. So the end result is when somebody is reading or scanning your website copy or your marketing messaging, it feels familiar to them. It feels like they can trust you because you're using the language, you get them, you're using the language that they're familiar with. So using language that your audience can relate to and is familiar with is another way to build that connection.
Okay.
Yeah. And maybe one last thing I am
Yeah.
going to share is using you and your. It's such a simple thing, but in copywriting, this is like an obvious one, but I can imagine that it's not that obvious to others. Using you and your more than you use I and we. So when you go on your website, you will notice, because it's so natural to do that, you will notice that you often start your sentences with, I do this or we do this. Yes, you're speaking about your brand and you should be because it is your website, but your goal is to connect to your audience. And when you reframe and switch those phrases from I and we to you and your, you make your audience the hero of that story. You put them in the spotlight and you make them feel as if you're having a conversation like you and I, as if they're just having a conversation. And what your audience, what your prospects feel when they read those messages is that, yes, it's speaking to me because you're literally addressing me. So it is a simple tweak in your copy, but it's a very powerful one.
Yeah. Is there any other, I mean, I think you went like through 2 or 3 different ways.
So we talked about start with knowing and understanding your audience. Then we talked about creating a relatable brand story. We talked about leveraging storytelling techniques in your writing. We talked about using you and your more than you use I and we. And we talked about using language that reflects your audience to make it personal. And there's one last thing, which is speaking to emotional benefits rather than features in your messaging. And that's an important one, but it's also very natural for us to just list all the things that we do. For example, if you're an interior designer or a creative entrepreneur, and when you get on somebody's services page, there's like a laundry list of all the things that you do. Here's like, we do this and we do this, and here's how we can help, all the things. It's a little bit overwhelming, but what it's not giving your audience is, but how does that help me? How does that change my life? How does it, whatever your service is, how does it make things easier? There's this saying in marketing, it's you're not selling a mattress, you're selling a good night's sleep. That's a benefit to the customer. So focusing on the solution rather than the product. So yes, you may have really great features. And a simple way to do that is create a list, create it like a bullet list of all the features that you have, but then create another list along the side and say, okay, why is this important? Because it does what to in somebody's life? Because how does it make it easier? How does it make my life, simpler or more effective or more fun? Whatever that service is, whatever. So focus on the solution, because the solution is how you transform somebody's life or make their life easier. So you're focusing on how it relates to them emotionally. Why should they care? What is it going to do to me rather than what you sell? So it takes a bit of a focus from you onto your customers.
Yep. I love that. And if I think I do need to still probably do that in a very much more controlled environment. So if somebody like taking the list of attributes or the services and making it more clear, the benefits and the what you get from it, and just make it more concrete, I think. I don't think I've ever written it out. It's always been in my head, but I
Hmm.
think putting it down and actually thinking about it and writing it down would make it more solidified.
Yeah. And I think one way I've helped my clients do that is specifically on their services page when I always urge them to create an outline or articulate what their process looks like. What is it like to work with me? Here are the 6 steps to work with Barb. And with every step, for example, if one of the first steps of working with you would be, this is just discovery stage and where we get to know you, and this is where you can articulate how do you plan to get to know them? How do you can literally say, I want to know. If you were an interior designer, you would say, I literally want to know, what do you do in the mornings? Because in order for me to create that transformation in your home, I want to know, how do you like to experience your home? What do you
Mm,
do? How do you use every space? You're really connecting with them. You're really making it super personal. So
mhm,
that's how you do that. And then in another step, it could be, instead of just, I'm going to manage your project from start to finish so you don't have to worry about anything. Literally explain to me, what do I not have to worry about now?
mm,
Well, you're not going to have to worry about dealing with contractors, all the knowing how to read technical drawings, knowing how to do this, not running to different tile stores looking for different tiles. I'm going to bring you the option. Like, explain to them, instead of just saying what it is that you take care of, what it looks like on their end. What are
mm.
they going to experience as a result of working with you?
Yeah. I like that. A whole bunch of freaking ideas just popped in my head for my social posts.
Right? That's
I love
awesome.
this. Yeah, that's really good. Okay.
Yeah.
So now with AI, I'd like to go into this and take what you just said, and it's important just in marketing, just in being able to offer up our services that we can help people. How does this relate now with AI coming in and just that whole side of things that keeps getting thrown in our face?
Well, are we talking about leveraging AI and making sure that whatever output AI produces is like human and not, it doesn't sound robotic? Is that what you want to know?
More so how by doing this, it maybe sets us apart, or how can this set us apart? I'm maybe not talking about the output from using AI, but maybe saying that we are not AI, we are not robots, and differentiating. Maybe that's my question is this how we differentiate ourselves from people doing really AI related websites, or these, because there's so much content that's coming out now that is auto generated, and it could be real or not real. So how do we use this to our advantage to differentiate ourselves?
Yeah, and that's a great question, because when I look at a website, I can immediately tell if it was written by AI or not. Not everybody can spot this, but to me, I can already tell because I am using AI in my job. I'm using it for research, I'm using it for focus groups, doing all kinds of cool things
Mhm.
with AI. But what AI will not give you is your personal story. So you know how they say that, for example, it's so hard to stand out between different service providers. If you do the same thing that everybody else, like a marketing agency is a marketing agency, an interior designer is an interior designer everywhere, right? So they all kind of offer similar services, or they can offer a similar service, but nobody can replicate your story. Nobody can replicate what you've done. What experience did you have prior to becoming whoever it is that you are today, or the type of service provider you are? So all that, your journey, your background, your story, that's yours. Nobody can replicate that. Nobody can take that from AI. So yes, AI can generate pretty good content sometimes. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's shitty, but you can get a decent web copywriting, and if you give it the right prompt and ask it to optimize it for SEO, it probably will, but it's not going to replicate a human. It's not going to replace a human, because you still have to go through that and inject it with your storytelling, inject it with your personal facts, inject it with information about your audience. Because you can't, I just don't think AI can do all the things that we can do. And I think it's so important to keep it human. Yes, we can leverage those tools and use those tools to our advantage to make our life easier and simpler and just streamline our processes, but you then have to go back and inject it with personality in order to stand out with your
Mhm.
personality, inject it with information and insights about your audience and about your brand, about what you bring to the table, about who you are.
Mhm.
So nobody says don't use that,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
you can use that. We've had so many conversations in the copywriting world about, well, AI is going to replace us. No, but somebody who's using AI, will replace those people that are not using AI, or maybe it's going to, they have an edge. They have a competitive edge over those who are refusing to use it, because there's really good use cases for AI, and you
Mhm.
should be leveraging that.
Yeah. I'm in the bucket of not using AI for copywriting. I wholeheartedly believe in the connection or the partnership between me and my copywriter and copywriters in general, because they have such a unique way of bringing out those little details for me. And I don't have to spend the time trying to train somebody else to get to know me when I can say in one sentence, because the copywriters like yourself, you're trained to pick up these things and
Mhm.
to understand them. And it's way less work for me.
It is. It
I
is.
mean, come on.
Because once you start using AI, and like I said, I don't use it to write. I use it to research, and I use it to run focus groups, which is like a really cool thing that I learned, because,
Mm,
you can get to, like, it's basically you're just getting together at a table, different kind of prospects, and asking them questions, but you've you've given the AI tool information about, this is the prospect. This is prospect called Jenny. Jenny is an architect. Da, da, da. How would you reply to this question through her lens or through her perspective? But writing using real people's information, that's why I do client interviews. It's 100% real. It's talking to your clients. It's being in the same room. It's learning about them. And that's all the details that you were speaking of. That's what gives color to your writing, I feel
yeah.
like.
Yeah. You know what to ask and dig deeper with, because you hear the tone, you can see the facial expressions if you're doing the video Zoom, um,
Absolutely.
and all of that. And I still think, even with the little bit that I've been trying, because I do go in there and try things just to see
Hmm.
how it's working so I can better understand it. And it still does not know, like even when I tell it to say, ask me the questions you need to ask me to get this, or that, and it still doesn't do it properly. So I'm still, it's still got a long ways to go. I'm not saying that's a long years wise. I think it's like super fast, but it's got a long way to go before it's going to be this. I think it's overhyped at the moment. I think it's just so new. So
I mean, service providers love talking about AI, and now you
yeah,
see all kinds of marketing that's talking, let me teach you about how to use AI and how to do
yeah,
prompts and how to do this and how to do this using AI. But what you just said, when you're on Zoom with a client talking, feeding off their facial expressions, how can this replace, how can this be replicated with AI if I'm there in the Zoom room
hmm,
and I can ask follow-up questions? If a client says something that caught my attention, I'm going to dig deeper. Whereas if you were just typing it to ChatGPT or whatever other tool that you're using, you've lost that moment, because it was kind of like, okay, here's the answer to your question. But where you're sitting with a real person and you're asking them, tell me more about this. No, tell me more. Can I
hmm,
ask you more? And you're like peeling that onion and getting such rich data that you can't possibly get anywhere else
hmm,
other than just from conversation between two humans.
yeah. Although, you know what this brings to point, and I'm curious about your perspective on this. Not that it's going to happen anytime soon, I think, or maybe not even in our lifetime potentially. Maybe so, who knows? Because there's all kinds of stuff that we don't know about yet that's happening. But they have these tools or these apps or like systems, probably even robots that can monitor facial expressions and kind of get the idea of what emotion is happening from that person's face. Do you think that, they can do that, but I can't see them then becoming a service provider, for example, right? Like
I
that seems
can't
kind of
even
weird,
imagine. I First of all,
right?
I'm not even familiar with those tools. That's like blowing my mind. That's
Yeah.
crazy. But I mean, let's see. I feel like with everything, with any new tool and any new technology, we got to experiment with that first and
Yeah.
see, okay, let's see what is it capable of and try it out. And
Yeah.
I've used tools in the past, like new trends and new things come out, and I try it. Some things stick, some things don't.
Yeah.
You just have
Yep.
to experiment. It's like this with everything. You experiment enough. The thing with AI, you have to experiment for a long time, I feel like.
Hmm.
Like when it first came out in October of, what is it now? A couple of years now. When it first came out, I was like, okay, no, 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 I'm not even going to go there. I'm not even going to go there. And then slowly, like the more of my friend
Yeah.
copywriters, like, yeah, I'm using this and I'm finding this. And I'm like, okay, fine. I'm going to give it a try. And they
Yeah.
started experimenting. And then I warmed up to it and I started using it for very specific things.
Yeah.
I don't use it for all the things, but I use it for specific things. I don't know, like hashtag research. Sometimes I do use it
Okay.
for, even for personal things. But
Yeah.
I'm not sure about the new tools. You have to really use it for yourself and see,
Yeah.
is it going to get the job done? What
Yeah.
kind of results? You know?
Yeah, I like that. Okay, I have another question. So you were
Mhm.
talking about the ways to incorporate invoking emotion through connection, those 6 ways. And is there, I don't, maybe what's a couple of examples of how we can actually put that into action on our website or our socials?
Honestly, go back to your about page. That's where I would start. I would start with your about page and see how you're telling that story. Are you just focusing on what it is that you do and how you serve your clients? Or can you add on another layer of, well, hold on, let me stop there. What brought me here today? What have I done prior to becoming the service provider? What other skills did I pick up in my other 5 jobs before becoming the service provider? That's all interesting insights that could be relevant to your audience because, I speak to interior designers all the time and they tell me things like, well, yeah, like one of them tells me, like, yeah, I was in fashion before that. It's like, oh my God, how is this not on your website? That is so interesting. That is so
Yeah.
relevant. Let's bring it in. So I would start to make it truly actionable. I would start there. I would go to your about page and see how is it that you are describing what you do, and are you giving enough of a hook for your audience to relate to something that you're saying, whether it's your story, whether it's the different things that you like to do? Are you connecting like as a human to human? Are you maybe providing enough of a personal information so people can relate to, or is it just strictly business? Which is not wrong to be just strictly business. I've met a ton of service providers that I worked with that just did not want to go that route and
Hmm.
share anything personal. But in my experience, when you share something personal, you help your audience evoke that sense of, yes, I know you.
Hmm.
I feel I've never met you, but I feel like I already know you. And that's what we're trying to get to. Because at the end of the day, like when you think about how do you hire people, because I'm sure you hire people and outsource things. I hire people on a regular basis and I outsource different things. And it's not because of what they're capable of, but sometimes it's simply because I just like them and I've
Hmm.
created that bond and I hopped on a discovery call and I'm like immediately like, yes, yes, she is the person for me. She gets me. And I
Hmm.
haven't even looked at all the things that they're capable of.
Hmm.
So I would start
Yes.
there.
That's a good one. I can relate to that a lot. That makes sense. Okay, so is there anything that you would add that maybe I didn't know to ask around the subject?
No, I think we've covered a lot. I think the only thing that I would add is just dig a little bit deeper with the audience. Because when I start working with clients and they tell me about their audience, and I can see that they've downloaded some type of customer avatar worksheet and they put, my ideal client is John. He is 45. He is a lawyer. Da 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 da. I'm like, dig a little bit deeper. What is he into? Where does he hang out? Because it really, when you know your audience deeper than like demographics and psychographics, that's when it gets interesting. That's when you have a lot more potential to create that emotional connection and evoke some type of feeling with
Mhm.
your marketing messaging.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
All right. For those listening, what is the one takeaway that you hope that they walk away from this episode with?
I hope that they treat their website as a platform where you allow your audience to see themselves rather than it's a platform that just talks about you.
I like that.
Yeah.
It's a great takeaway.
It's not an online resume. It has to be like a platform where you create those connections with your ideal clients.
Yeah, that's perfect. That's going to go in the social snippet sharing piece. I like that last part that you just said. That was like, that just captured everything, I think, very well. So
Amazing.
awesome. Okay, so if somebody is interested in hearing more about what you have to offer and just reaching out to you, where's the best place that they can reach you?
You can go to contentvertical.com. That's my website. And you can also follow me on my Instagram, masha.copywriter. And I have a podcast, Marketing for Designers.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. This was great.
Thanks so much, Barb.
All right. And that wraps up this episode. Stay tuned for more episodes to help your business thrive online. We'll see you in the next sweet spot. Cheers. Thank you for sticking around. I hope you enjoyed the episode. If you're looking for SEO and content marketing help, you can find all kinds of information at compassdigitalstrategies.com. And if you like the episode, please tell a friend. Cheers.